Good evening, everybody. Welcome to UCT's Virtual Open Week, to the Studying Law at UCT session. This evening, we are going to be sharing some thoughts, some information, and some of the excitement of studying law at UCT. So welcome, thank you for joining us. I think the main thing for you as participants to remember is that you can go to the Q&A, which is in a little block on your toolbar, and you can enter all your questions as we go in that section. So you post the question and then we will sort of answer at the end of each of the sessions that we're going to have. So bear that in mind. You're welcome to ask any questions that you have. If the questions that you ask are being answered in another section, we'll get to that question at that point. So let me just quickly go through the program for this evening. First, we are going to hear from the Dean of Law, Professor Danwood Cherwa, who will explain about the faculty, about studying law at UCT, and I imagine some of the challenges that you as students might face if you come to UCT to study the LLB. After that, the Dean will also just look a little bit at remote learning, and what that's been like for students during 2020 under pandemic conditions, and some of what the implications might be for next year. We'll then have a look at what the LLB curriculum is about, how it's structured, and then look at some of the kinds of careers that students who graduate with an LLB can look forward to. I think after that, we will look at admissions. I'm sure many of you have got questions about what's happened to your application. Has it been received? You've heard back, but now you're not sure what the next steps are. So we'll look at some of those issues. We'll also look at scholarships and funding availability. And then we are very pleased that we've got the Law Students Council today, who are going to join us towards the end and share some of their insights into life as a law student, what you can expect, what exciting things are available for students to do at UCT, and some of the tips and tools that they've learned the hard way through experience about being a law student. So thanks again for joining us. I'm going to hand over to the Dean, Professor Danwood Cherwa. And don't forget to put your questions into the Q&A block. Thanks. Over to Danwood.
Thanks, Gabby. Let me load my PowerPoint. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Virtual Law Open Day. We normally have this event in April on campus. This year we're doing it online. As we know, it's difficult, it's not possible to do it in person, but welcome to this event. I hope it will be useful. By this stage, the applications will have closed, and then we have different types of people in the audience. It could be that some of you have already received offers from or interim offers. Some of you haven't yet received those offers. We'll try to cover all those aspects of what you might need to know. What I want to do at the beginning is to provide some justification for why you should choose to study law and also why you should study at UCT. With me here is Ms. Gabby Ritchie, who is the Marketing and Development Manager in the faculty, the person who is moderating this event. We also have the Deputy Dean for Undergraduate Studies, Dr. Kathy Idenson. We also have the Faculty Manager, Ms. Tabile Loko. We also have other members of the Faculty Office, the Undergraduate Faculty Manager, Ms. Katie van de Vent, and then we have the Law Students Council with us, headed by the President, Ms. Danielle Plykes. We normally work with the students They play an important role, and we feel like we should and we always do work with them hand in hand. As I said, I'm glad that you're interested to study at UCT and also to study law. Some of you might be choosing law as a second option, waiting for decisions or having received other offers in other faculties. I would like to urge you to consider law as the first option. And I'll explain to you why that is the case. Why should one choose to study law? You may have been influenced by relatives. It might be that you know somebody who is a lawyer, or you have experienced in the family a legal problem, and that's why you probably are thinking of studying law. I want to reinforce that initial interest by saying that you're not in the wrong place. Law is a fascinating field of study. It is a vast field of study, which means one learns a lot about the law itself, but also about other fields or related fields. It could be politics, it's whether it's the running of government, functioning of government, policy making. It could be medicine, insurance, business, or aspects of life are covered by the law. So when one studies the law, you don't just learn about the law itself, one also learns about the other aspects of life. Law is always an evolving field. It is always expanding. There are always new laws, there are always new legal problems. And so one keeps learning. It's a lifetime endeavor of learning if one goes into law. Whether as a student, but also even after starting work, one continues to learn. Of course, there are many opportunities which will be spoken about in detail here. I just want to flag this as one of the reasons lawyers get jobs. It's not a profession, it's not a degree that is without its own profession. It has its own market, which is always there, always recruiting new people. And there are ladders. You continue to grow into other professions as you go ahead. So it's a very marketable profession. You could do many things with the law degree. You could do many things, even if you choose not to become a lawyer or practice law. There are many things that you could do with law. You could become rich, of course, earn a lot of money if you practice or serve in the legal profession itself. You could become very rich, but you could also be very influential. Yeah, and then to be influential doesn't require a lot of money. But lawyers are influential people. People with legal qualifications tend to be very influential, whether it is in politics, whether it is in practice, legal practice, whether it is in government service, whether it is in private, the business sector, or whether it is in civil society. You could influence policy, you could influence how things work. You could also be influential within the family. You could become dependable within the family, either for legal advice or resolving issues that the family faces, but also access to networks and opportunities for family members. So it's a field that is not just fascinating in itself, one learns a lot, but also you can become powerful and influential. Of course, make a lot of money. Why would you want to study at UCT? I'm sure most of you have already made a decision that it has to be UCT. Some of you could be having offers from other places. I would like to encourage you to stick with us, mainly because we are the best law school. We consider ourselves in Africa. We're the best law school in South Africa. We still continue to be ranked as a law school within the global rankings as the best on the continent and in South Africa. So that means that we attract the best students. We attract the very best in the country and on the continent. And then if you choose to study with us, you compete with the best. And because of that competition, you're pushed, you study more, you work harder, you learn more, and become better. We have a good reputation, which also means that the first jobs that you get, the way you study makes a difference. People say, where did you get your degree? Okay, you got it from UCT. We trust that law faculty, therefore we're going to employ you. Whether you got the highest marks or not really the highest marks. Some other people get very high marks from their university, but because of reputational issues, the lack of trust in their degrees that they offer, you may get an advantage. So studying at one of the best law schools helps, at least with the first job that you get or the second, but also over time you want to still be linked to the best universities, the place where you graduated from. And because we are a top law school, we also attract some of the best and leading academics. Before I get there, maybe let me talk about the student body. You might hear in the papers, you might see in the papers or in the media, people saying many things about UCT. Many don't mention the fact that we have become quite diverse, not just as members of staff, but also as students. 66% of our students now are women, and women perform exceedingly well. We have a large number of our students as postgraduate students, so more or less 45%, 55% split. And that too helps because our undergraduate students can relate with the postgraduate students, but also can see where they can go next. That education doesn't end with the first degree. There is much more to be done. The postgraduate students also assist us with the undergraduate teaching in many ways. We have diverse as well in terms of race, such that we're almost 50-50 at the moment. And we also have about 20% international students. This diverse body of students makes for a conducive environment for different forms of learning, but also different ideas, meeting people from different backgrounds, sharing stories, making friends, lifelong friendships with very different people. So the learning environment, which is diverse, helps and is good for the university. We do have also very experienced academics. Our faculty is quite senior. We have many professors, associate professors, senior lecturers, and highly qualified lecturers, most with doctoral degrees. And so the teaching quality is very good. It's very high. We normally, I mean, for all the compulsory courses, these are the core courses in the LLB, there is normally at least 2 people who teach on that course. This means that by the time one begins to take the specialized courses, the optional courses, by the time one gets to final year, you have been taught by many different people. And that helps in terms of expanding one's ideas, to exposing oneself to different forms of thinking and ideas and thoughts. We also have very good facilities, a beautiful campus, of course. This is one of the places where students hang out when there's some sunshine in Cape Town. It's a very beautiful campus. We have the middle campus is mostly law, which means our students have their own space to interact and relax, but also to study. We have our own library, which is used only by our students. We also have a whole building dedicated to us. This is one of our rooms, learning rooms. This is the Oliver Tambo Moot Court, where students practice their advocacy skills. We tend to draw on the judges of the Cape High Court when we're doing this, but also lecturers take part in the moots. It's a very nice building, but we do have the facilities for teaching, which make it conducive, which help students to study well and do the best and compete with the best in the world. I've talked about leading academics. We have most of our academics produce research of high quality, cited by the Constitutional Court and other courts. They also write books, leading books, which are used for teaching, not just at UCT, but in other universities as well. I want to talk briefly about who can study law. And now here, much as I've said that law is a fascinating study, a field of study, it is a subject that requires some level of hard work. It requires someone who is committed to reading, who enjoys reading, and is disciplined. Someone who can spend some time with a lot of material. It's different from other disciplines. Law has a lot of material to cover. There is a lot to be learned, which requires students to be disciplined. So one has to love the library, also get used to enjoying reading very big books. It can also be a reason to hold out to other students as if you're much cleverer than them when you carry these big books on campus. But yes, you will see big books, you will enjoy them, but it requires a lot of discipline. So if you are a person who is disciplined enough, loves reading, loves to learn, this is the field that you can join and enjoy. And one gets used to the rhythm of discipline, working hard, knowing more, wanting to learn. That comes with practice, and by the time one leaves the law school, they already get into the way of thinking like lawyers, working hard and being very disciplined. The discussion of the curriculum will happen later. I just want to highlight that we have 3 kinds of routes to the LLB. The first being the first 2 being the combined law degrees. So you study humanities and law, or Bachelor of Commerce and Law. You do 3 years and get a humanities degree with some law subjects, or BCom degree with some law subjects, and then you move to the Faculty of Law to finish the LLB in 2 years. The second is the another program. The third program is involves any degree without law subjects, and then after completing that degree, one applies for law to do 3 years and get the LLB. So the person also gets 2 degrees. Then maybe most of you are interested in the 4-year LLB program. What this entails will be discussed in the questions or when Gabi speaks about that. These are the this is a brief introduction to the study of law. And for now, I might break a bit to see if there are any questions before I get into, Gabby, is this the moment I can go into the remote teaching and how COVID has impacted teaching, or I can break for questions a bit and then get into that section. Thanks.
Danwood, there are lots of questions, so thank you to all of you who are sharing the things that you want to know. I think there are quite a few questions that are similar being asked by quite a few people. Most of the questions that have been asked so far are around application status, about different degree combinations, which I think we can answer in the next section. But I can have a quick look through to see if there are any that might be appropriate for now. But at a quick review, Danwood, I think we should carry on to look at remote learning, and we will tackle most of these questions, I think, in the next section. Is that okay?
Okay, thanks. Now I can remove this slide. Now about remote learning. So as you know, we somewhere at the beginning of the year, everything was running well, and then people started getting sick, especially those who had traveled and come back to South Africa. And then the university had to close down. At that time, there was a sense of panic. Everybody was afraid of the pandemic, but also about how the calendar will be saved. Students were very anxious as to how they could finish their degree or how they could progress. Staff, academics, were worried about how we could continue with the program. How are we going to teach? UCT is not a long-distance institution. It is a contact institution, and so all our skills over the years have been devoted to contact learning. And so this was quite a big challenge in April when we had to switch to a totally different way of delivering our academic program. So what we had to do at that time, as we were students were going home and us were thinking about how this is going to happen, was to quickly start thinking about how we could teach differently, how we could assess differently, and save the academic year, but also develop new ways of teaching and assessment. And so we worked very hard at the time as academics within the faculty, but also at the level of the university, and also with the students, especially the students locals. So some of the students you'll be listening to now. And we quickly, within a space of a month, came up with a new learning framework, with a new assessment framework, and lecturers also designed new lesson plans and how to communicate. We received a lot of support from our CHED, which is the Center for Higher Education on Upper Campus. They developed new tools to assist academics with the new forms of teaching, new forms of assessment. So there was a lot of relearning by lecturers, as much as students had also to adjust to the new ways of doing things. I'm glad that at the end of the day, we implemented this new system of teaching, remote teaching. We were probably the first to do so, and it went much more successfully than we had thought. The performance of the students was slightly better than in the previous years. Students worked much harder. Staff worked much harder. So it was more time consuming, definitely, for both staff and academics to learn remotely. But there were some very good things that came out of this, not least the fact that students had to work learn some discipline, and I think they were very disciplined. That accounts for some of the performance, the better performance. They had to learn how to plan their work, to schedule their work and their assessments on their own, much better than sometimes we experience it. Academics had to come up with, to challenge themselves and come up with new ways of teaching, not the same ways that they were used to, which was difficult at the beginning, but with time the quality of the teaching improved. By now, everybody is used to the new mode of teaching. Students have experienced it. We are experiencing less concerns from students and less concerns from staff. So it's worked exceedingly well. We hope that by the end of the year, the performance will be better, will be as good as it was in the first semester. Of course, there have been some challenges posed by this new way of doing things, not least the challenge of equalizing the learning environment. South Africa is very unequal. Students come from very different backgrounds. And when they're on campus, the university has control on the learning environment. They are more or less equal in that sense that they can go to the same library, they can go to the same classrooms and meet the lecturers. So this has been one of the major challenges. The university tried a lot to support students, providing data, providing laptops to those who needed them. But there have been some limitations in equalizing the learning environment because students have been studying in their homes where we cannot influence the social environment that they are in. This has also impacted on the methods of assessment to the extent that students are writing in their homes. We can't control that environment. We can't guarantee that they are not using methods that are not acceptable. There has also been a limitation on the extent to which we can support students, but also the technologies that we can use because some students cannot access those technologies much better. But there have been some good things that we have learned from this, some very innovative ways of teaching that we want to carry forward. We think that students also have coped better with some of these technologies than was the case before, and hopefully those can be carried over. But looking forward, and depending on how the pandemic pans out, it is likely that we're going to use a combination of remote or what they call blended learning, a combination of technologies, remote technologies, as well as in-contact teaching from next year. That's most likely what is going to happen, to take away some of the successes of the new ways of teaching forward to bolster the contact teaching. UCT will remain a contact teaching institution. Of course, we miss students, as I think they also miss being on campus and miss their lecturers as well. And that is also a critical part of the learning environment. So we hope that they will come back to campus, all of them, by the beginning of the next academic year, but there is a lot that we have learned through this period that will go into that our ways of teaching as well. I think I could stop here now for questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Chirwa. Again, we've got lots of questions. Our faculty office colleagues have got very busy starting to answer some of the questions that are coming up more often. So it would be great if you as participants could just keep track of the questions and answers in the live Q&A and have a look and see if your question has already been answered. Prof, for the rest of the questions, most of them are around subject choices, and around when applicants are likely to hear back. So I don't think there are any that we need to attend to specifically for this session. I'm open to correction from my other colleagues if they think they have seen questions that are best suited for you to address, Prof. Does anyone have a sense of questions that Prof. Cherwa should answer?
I think most of the questions, Gaby, are focusing on admissions. So we'll probably cover them when you speak on the admission criteria.
Okay. All right.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So, Prof, is that the end of your session?
Yes, that's the end of my session.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think we will move on then, but keep tracking the Q&A to see if your question has already been answered. We've got about 50 questions, so our colleagues have done everything they can to answer the easy ones and the ones that are coming up quite often. We're going to move on now to have a look at the LLB curriculum and some of the career choices. And a lot of the questions that have come up are around which courses do you do in which year, which degree programs or which degree pathways best, etc. So we're going to look at some of that now. All right, great, thank you. So there are 3 different pathways to doing the LLB, which quite a few of you have asked questions about in the questions there. And I'll just sort of go through what those are. The first one is what we call a combined stream LLB. And this is for students who take a first degree, an undergraduate degree in either humanities or commerce, and they would take law courses from their second year. And quite a few of you have asked about that, and you've asked about which faculty you would register in if this is your chosen route. And I think you will see the responses have been, you will register in the faculty of your first degree, where you will start doing law courses as part of that degree, but it's not your focus. So once you've graduated with this degree, a BCom or a BSoc Sci or a BA in humanities, the student then registers for a 2-year LLB program. And it is obviously a graduate degree because you already will have an undergraduate, but it is part of the LLB stream. One is ideally, if you follow this route, going to graduate within 5 years. You'll do a 3-year undergraduate followed by a 2-year LLB, which takes you to 5 years if you do and complete your courses in the sort of minimum time. This is regarded as a really good route to take to qualify with an LLB. And the main reason for this is that as an undergrad in one of the other faculties, particularly in humanities, you are exposed to a whole lot of different ways of thinking, and you come into the LLB with that grounding and that basis. And what the faculty has found is that students who follow that route often come in better qualified to succeed in their law courses once the LLB section of their qualification gets underway. The second choice is a graduate LLB, and this is where you will have done an undergraduate degree in humanities or commerce or science, but you won't have done any law undergraduate subject. So you may not have realized when you first registered that law was something you were interested in, but by the time you've graduated, you're thinking that law is what I want to do. So you would then register for a 3-year LLB, also graduate program, which is focused only on the law courses. This is also considered to be a very good option, again, because you bring in skills and perspectives from your undergraduate degree. And the third option is what we call the straight LLB, which is where you register in the law faculty. So you come straight in as a first year into the law faculty and you start your LLB degree from sort of straight away, doing law courses in first year. It's only the 3rd and the 4th years of the straight LLB that are focused on law. Your first 2 years would include electives of one kind or another, and there are sort of specific requirements and sort of guidelines on what those electives can be. It's often thought that the four-year LLB is quite a challenging way to do the degree because it brings, as we said just now, it brings first years directly into law subjects, which are, I might as well just say it up front, it's heavy reading loads. I think you will hear that from everyone. And I'm sure when the students join us in a bit, they will probably repeat the feature of an LLB being a lot of reading. So there are sort of core skills that are expected of UCT law graduates. And the idea of, well, the way the curriculum is structured through the LLB program is that you will come out with an LLB degree with these core skills. And these are just sort of the main ones. It's expected that you would be able to critically analyze a piece of reading, case law perhaps, some kind of analytical resource around law. You'd be able to read it, understand it, analyze it, and be able to argue a case around that reading. Certainly writing is a major skill that is developed and expected of students, that you would be able to draft, certainly in terms of law, a clear written argument. Research is another key skill that you would be able to look in, certainly in the library, but that you would be able to find relevant cases that apply to the course you're doing. And you would be able to find material that supports the work that is required of you. The fourth skill is argument and presentation. I would think that's pretty clear if you are hoping at some point to be in a court of law, to be able to argue cases on behalf of clients, or even to be able to sit in a mediation session perhaps and pitch for your client, argue your client's case. Argument and presentation are really critical. Sharing ideas is the fifth skill that we really foreground because it's required that you understand what you're talking about, that you can think on your feet, but that you really have an understanding of what you're discussing and what you're presenting, and that you can communicate that very clearly. So that's, I suppose, the skills around which the law degree are structured. And the idea is that as you go through the degree and sort of from preliminary courses into intermediate year, into your final sort of final year of law courses, you would develop and be building all the time on those skills, improving as you go. So how it works is in the four-year degree, your preliminary subjects are done over 2 years, and that's because you will do some law courses and some electives. You then have your third year, which is your intermediate subjects, and your final year, which are your final year subjects. The 3-year degree only focuses on 1 year of preliminary because it's not required for graduates to be doing electives. They just do law courses. So they do a 3-year degree. For the students who are in the combined stream, they would do a 2-year LLB because they have already done their preliminary courses as part of their undergraduate degree. So they're coming in at the intermediate level, and they are doing intermediate and final year, a 2-year course. So the courses are structured very clearly in what are preliminary courses, intermediate courses, and final year courses. And we're just providing a sort of sense here for you to see what the core courses are for first year and for intermediate year, and then for final year. And by the time you get to final year, that's really where the electives kick in and where you can have some freedom of choice around a special interest area of yours, perhaps something that you want to pursue. You might be thinking of postgraduate studies and you're interested in a particular area. It's in final year that you really get a chance to express those interests. So certainly for students doing the 4-year program, the undergraduate LLB students have to complete elective options. And I've just given a sort of idea of what those might be. And you can follow that up in more detail in the faculty handbook. And then again, we've just given an idea of some of the sorts of electives that you get to choose when you're in final year. For example, civil justice reform, constitutional litigation, social justice and the Constitution. Those kinds of courses become available in your final year. Okay, so careers. I think one of the reasons why people are a little bit fearful about registering for a law degree is it feels kind of finite and definite, and that once they make the decision, they don't really have any flexibility. What we have discovered, and I'll come back to this a little bit later very briefly, is that, sorry, I just need to go through this quickly. So those, yeah, is that the skills that I referred to earlier, where we looked at being able to argue, being able to read and analyze and put a case forward, being able to present clearly, that those skills are what we call transferable. And it's really quite remarkable how those skills, even though your course content is focused on law, those skills will qualify you to work in a whole range of sectors, not necessarily as a practicing law professional. But if you are interested in pursuing law very clearly and directly, there are many career paths that are open to you. The first one is as an academic. So you would do your LLB, which is equivalent to an honours. And to start working as an academic, you really would need a minimum of a master's qualification to start lecturing. And then after that, it would probably be expected that you would do a PhD. But that's certainly a route that LLB graduates might take if they were really interested in particular areas of law and in researching that rather than in practicing it. Although you will find that in a large number of the UCT academic staff in the law faculty are qualified advocates. They've practiced in the corporate sector. They've done, different kinds of work in law and then come back to academia. They've come back to lecturing, and they've pursued their particular interests in the academic field. If you want to be an advocate, you would have to go and do 1 year's training, which is called pupillage, with a practicing advocate who is already a member of the bar. It can be quite a challenge because this is an unpaid year. It's regarded as part of your training and part of your education. And the work of an advocate would generally sort of be or focus around doing legal research, drafting opinions and pleadings, and presenting cases in court. And that is mostly in the high courts, although not only. But the way that the advocate attorney system works at the moment is that advocates are briefed by attorneys, and you can't as a member of the public sort of phone an advocate to represent you in court. You would have an attorney and they would contract an advocate. Probably the most common option for law graduates is to become an attorney. And what this requires is that after you've got your law degree, you would do articles at a law firm, which means serving as a candidate attorney with qualified attorneys in a practice of some kind. You then write professional exams, and if you pass those, you are admitted to the High Court as an attorney, and you're called an attorney of the High Court of South Africa. We always like to just make sure that it is clear that doing the LLB in South Africa as an international student doesn't qualify or entitle you to then practice or to become a candidate attorney. All the sort of labour and work permit restrictions then sort of click in at that stage. So just having done the LLB is not it's not an entitlement to then work in the legal field in South Africa. And I think it's quite important to remember. One of the other careers that is, I think, quite sort of widely taken up by LLB graduates is in consulting firms, in the corporate sector, not in law firms specifically. So most corporates have got a legal advisor or counsel sort of department or unit for those lawyers to advise the company in a whole range of things. You also have legal advisors working in the tax sort of area, in real estate, in labor relations in companies, working on contracts, working in mergers and acquisitions. I mean, it's really quite an endless open field where qualified lawyers' legal advice is required simply for the running of an entity. Lawyers are often forensic auditors, they're ombudsmen, they can be ethics and employment officers. Again, the list really does go on, and we like to think that law really isn't just for lawyers. Having an LLB will sort of open up a whole range of career paths. One of the other places obviously is government, where you would work as a state attorney, as a prosecutor, as a court magistrate, possibly even as a judge. You might get involved in legislative drafting, in council affairs, in the Department of Foreign Affairs. And again, as with the business sector, there's a range of options in the government sector around law and how you could actually use your degree. The other really important option that is open to law graduates is working in the nonprofit sector. This is often around social justice, around public interest litigation, around playing a sort of watchdog role, if you like, and organizations that come to mind that many of you might have heard of are Equal Education, who have a law center that focuses on challenging government to deliver on mandates that they are committed to and that is part of what they're supposed to do. But often we find that this actually doesn't happen until there's some kind of legal action. So the public benefit organizations, public interest litigation, social justice sector is a really important environment where qualified LLB or qualified attorneys are often sort of using their skills for social good, if you like. So that really covers the career options. And I'm just going to get out of my screen share here so we can have a look again at the questions. Okay, we're now up to about 65 questions. I want to just go through quickly and see on the published questions which ones have and have not yet been answered, because most of the questions actually were around, well, a lot of the questions were around the degree structure. And I'm just scrolling through to see that most of those ones have been answered. But here's a question, for example, I would like to join the BCom LLB, but NSFAS has recently stopped funding for the 2-year LLB. We're going to look at funding options in the second presentation after this. So we'll come back to that around which degrees are still funded at the moment by NSFAS, because there have been changes. Other questions that are coming up. Lot of questions are being asked around when are you going to hear back, and we'll have a look at that also just now. Okay, I'm just quickly scrolling through. This is quite a little bit sort of cumbersome. Okay, someone has asked the question, are students introduced to moot court debates in first year? What I can tell you is that there is a very active student moot society, and you can join that in first year. But I'm going to call on Dr. Idenson, the Deputy Dean of Undergraduate, to answer that question around where in the curriculum mooting actually fits. Dr. Idenson.
Thanks, Gaby. Evening, everybody. The moot takes place in the final year of the LLB degree program. You do what we call, you will do what we call an integrated assessment moot, which you will get an opportunity to present a case, drawing on a set of facts or a given scenario that will raise issues of law in all sorts of courses that you will have studied in the preceding years of the LLB. So it's in the final year. That's a compulsory moot for all students. And then there are also further possibilities in your final year of study to do elective courses, which involve participating in moots or moot competitions.
Thanks, Dr. Idenson. Okay, going through many more. Thanks again to colleagues who have done their best to answer questions as they're coming up, just to deal with the volume of questions, because we know you are wanting to ask a whole lot of things, and being able to address each of them is I don't think we're going to have time for that. There is a question about whether UCT has exchange programs and how these work. The exchange programs that UCT runs for outgoing students from UCT are in operation mostly at a master's level. We do run semester study abroad where international students come into the undergraduate courses, but perhaps one of my colleagues, either Kathy or Tabile, would be able to answer this a little bit better.
Yes, you are correct, Gaby. Most of our exchange opportunities are available at the master's level. We have a variety of programs available with different universities. I think what I would do is to encourage, once a student is already registered, to just send an email to Law Studies and look out for the various adverts that we usually put on campus.
Great, thanks. The Law Studies email address will come up at the end, so we will make sure that you can see and are able to access that email address very clearly. Okay, there's some more specifics on applications, which we're going to look at just now. I'm just going through the last few. There's an interesting question here about the hardest part of online learning and how students have overcome this. And we're going to leave that for the Law Students Council to respond to when they join us, because I think it will be very useful to hear about online learning from a student perspective. So we'll come back to that. Okay, there is a question about whether UCT will continue with remote learning next year. And I think that has been addressed by the Dean and also in some of the responses to questions in the chat. Okay, I'm just going to quickly go through the last few questions. There are more questions about submitting marks, about submitting documents, about whether applications are complete, and some participants are worried that they're not going to be able to get their documents in time, or their documents haven't been received, and so on. There is a question here about what would international students need to do to get jobs as attorneys in South Africa. I am going to ask Dr. Idenson to respond to that question. Thank you.
Thanks, Gaby. A South African LLB does not automatically entitle international students to practice in South Africa. I think you should probably address your question to the Law Society, but the general principle is that a South African LLB will not automatically qualify you for legal practice.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this question because it's sort of been asked a few times. Why is it that 55 students are chosen for the LLB 4-year degree, and what are the requirements to be selected? So while we are going to look at admissions in a little bit, it might be useful just to address the requirements for the 4-year degree just very quickly here. Tabile, may I ask you to answer that, please?
I do think you will cover it in your presentation, Gaby, but just a quick touch on what's required for the 4-year LLB. We look at what is called a faculty point score and a weighted point score. Guaranteed admission, you must have a faculty point score of 530. Probable admission, you must have a weighted point score of 510. We used to also look at the NBT, but for 2021 admissions, we no longer look at the NBT. So I think I'll stop there for now.
Thanks, Tabile. Okay, we will crack on and have a look very briefly at some of the sort of key aspects of admissions, because again, I mean, we're aware that you've got a lot of questions around admissions, criteria, when you're going to hear back, what's the deal, you're waiting to hear, those kinds of things. So let's have a quick look at admissions. Give me 1 second. To screen share. Thank you. Okay, so becoming a UCT law student, what are the admission requirements for law? Somebody asked a question that I think has been answered already about whether you can apply for law with Maths Lit. There are no specific subject requirements for law, so pure maths is not a requirement. Let's just sort of say that up front. Okay, so this is what Tabile was just explaining around the faculty point system. So for general applications for 2021, 530 points are required. And for applications that are also considered on UCT's disadvantage system, and we'll come to a bit more information about that in a bit, you would need at least 510 points, but places in that category are offered on quite a competitive basis. Again, just a reminder that the national benchmark test for applications have been waived for 2021's applications because of COVID. Okay, so how are these 530, 510 weighted point scores? How are all of these things calculated? An applicant's NSC, National Senior Certificate results, are converted into a faculty point score based on the percentage obtained in each of your matric subjects, excluding life orientation. So it means that each subject is out of 100, and you would take whatever your mark is out of 100 for each subject and add those together. For applicants to the undergraduate LLB who do have socioeconomic disadvantage or home or schooling disadvantage, the applicant's weighted point score is then considered. So it's quite a straightforward formula, but you would be able to calculate your own disadvantage factor and how that might adjust your scoring and make you perhaps more eligible for applying to the law faculty. You can go to the link down here. So this is also all available. We're going to drop these links into the Q&A a little bit later. So don't worry if you don't catch that right now. We often have questions about students internationally applying to do law at UCT, or students in South Africa who have written a non-South African matric. So anyone who is holding a non-South African school leaving certificate has to qualify for a matriculation exemption through South Africa's matriculation board. And it's quite a process, but it isn't possible to attain your degree without having that equivalence settled by the matriculation board. So that is an application process you would need to go through. Again, we can drop those links into the chat. I want to transfer from another university. How do I do this? Okay, so all students who want to transfer to the 4-year LLB, your admission would still use your matric scores to be assessed. So once you receive a conditional offer based on your matric scores, you would then be given information on how you apply for credits for the courses you've already done. And UCT has quite a thorough credit system, but not all law courses across the country, I believe, are credited at UCT. I'm sure one of my colleagues can correct me in a little bit if that is not entirely the case. Okay, I haven't heard anything yet. So I've submitted my application and it's all gone very quiet. What's the deal? So I think one of the things that is quite important to note is that firstly, we always receive thousands of applications. And secondly, the application deadline was extended by a month this year. So we've received even more applications. And we would normally have completed all the processing by September, but it does mean because of this high volume, we are taking a little bit longer this year, but don't panic, you will hear back from us. Things don't go missing in the system. It will all eventually be processed by by admissions, and you will hear back on your application one way or another. I received a conditional offer. What's the deal? Okay, so conditional offers are usually made once 2 sets of internal school exam results, usually your grade 12s, and NBT results are available. But because NBTs have been waived for this year, and because the school year has been a little bit out of sync, conditional offers have been made on the basis of grade 11 and grade 12 term 1 results. So when will I get a firm offer then? These firm offers are usually only made once the university has received your final matric results, and the delayed matric exams for 2020 and the delayed results release means that firm offers will probably only be made in February 2021. So again, the timing of this year is quite out of sync with the way the academic calendar usually runs. But again, you will hear back from us one way or the other. Okay, I've moved a little bit further along and I've actually got a firm offer from UCT and I want to study law. Now what? You will be sent information about when and where to attend orientation. And we really encourage first-year students to come to orientation. We encourage our 3-year graduate program students also to attend orientation. So it's not only for first years. It's really an opportunity to, we like to think, to get ahead of the game so that you know what's expected of you, where your resources are, where the faculty office is, where the library is, where the Students' Representative Council sits, how you join societies, what else is available, what comprises this student life that you're going to sort of be entering into. And one of the most important reasons to come to orientation is to make sure you get hooked up onto UCT's Wi-Fi network. Very important point. But you will get communication around what that's all about. You will also hear about laptop requirements, those kinds of things. Your parents or guardians will also be invited to orientation, and this is where the university registrar explains to parents the shifts in being the parent of a school-going child and the parent of a university student. It's not only the students who are in for quite a change in how life works, but parents also need to get used to the fact that their children are now officially kind of university-going adults and that the dynamic is different. We also explain to parents at parent orientation a little bit more about how the university works and what they can expect and what they need to watch out for. Okay, here again are some of the links for information, all sorts of information about law, and also these email addresses. We will drop those also into the chat in due course. I'm going to stop screen sharing and go back to the questions, which no doubt have piled up. Okay. I'm just going to have a look at some of the, just go back and have a look for some of the unanswered questions. Sorry. Okay. Okay, some of the other questions that have come in, I didn't get a response on my application. Is it rejected? There have been a lot of these kinds of questions, and I hope that we have put some of your concerns at ease a little bit, that you will hear back. You will hear back whether you will not receive an offer. You will hear back whether your offer is conditional one way or another. By the end of October, you will have heard from UCT. When does the academic year start? It's anticipated to start at the beginning, in the middle of March, sorry, on the 15th of March, but this may change. Things, as I'm sure all of you know, are still quite up in the air, and nothing is pinned down for sure. But at the moment, the university is looking at a mid-March start to the academic year. How does UCT accept matric rewrites? Could I ask the Faculty Office, Kelly, would you perhaps be able to answer how we deal with matric rewrites? Thank you.
Thank you, Gaby. Good evening, everyone. So when we assess students who are rewriting, we use the current results on system, and this sometimes leads to the applications being declined. When they rewrite, they can forward us their results with a copy to admissions, and we will reassess the application to see if they then meet the criteria.
Thanks, Kelly. There are a couple of questions around careers here. So one of the questions is, what is the difference between an attorney and an advocate? And one of the other questions is, if students go outside of South Africa to do a law master's, could they still practice in South Africa when they come back? Kathy, I'm going to ask you please to address the difference between attorney and advocate and practicing if students return with an LLM from elsewhere.
Let me start with the second question. As long as you have a South African LLB degree, you are eligible to enter the legal profession in South Africa. If you want to enter the profession as an attorney, you'll still have to do 2 years of articles of clerkship. And if you want to enter as an advocate, you'll do your 1 year of pupillage. The master's qualification is not a prerequisite for legal practice in South Africa. The prerequisite is a South African LLB degree. The difference between an advocate and an attorney, apart from the differences in the training period, the advocate doing the 1 year pupillage and the attorney doing a 2 year period of articles of clerkship, an advocate's work is largely comprised of writing legal opinions, giving high-level legal advice, and presenting cases in court and arguing trials. Attorneys deal with members of the public directly, and generally their work is more varied, although of course they may specialize in a particular area of law, but they deal directly with clients, and they do all sorts of things. Conveyancing, that's the sale and transferring of immovable property, houses and so on. They do a little bit of trial work and court appearance work usually in the lower courts. They draft wills, so there's more variety, there's more scope for specialization, and it's a more kind of hands-on job.
Thank you very much, Kathy. We have a question about entering the combined LLB degree stream after completing 3 years in humanities, and someone wants to know how competitive this degree stream is. Kelly, could I ask you to answer that?
Can you just repeat that, Gaby?
Yeah, sure. Someone's wondering how competitive it is to get into the LLB if you've completed a 3-year undergrad in humanities.
So there is published admission criteria, so we would look at the admission criteria, and if you meet it, you will receive an offer.
Just to add that, Gaby, that's our favorite stream, so we tend to take most of the applicants that meet the admission criteria there.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, my understanding is that it is academically quite competitive and that you would need to have reached a particular percentage, a GPA, if you like. Is that correct, Abile?
Yes, you must have obtained a GPA of 65% if you are doing the BA, or 63% if you are doing the BCom.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, there are a couple of other questions. So is the LLB for, if you've done a BCom LLB, is the 2-year LLB regarded as a postgrad, or is it still an undergrad? And I know that this is it's not a sticky issue, and it's actually quite administrative. So I'm going to ask Kelly if you wouldn't mind answering that. Thank you.
Thanks, Gaby. It's still considered an undergraduate degree, but it's at NQF level 8. So regardless if you do the 4-year or the 3-year, it's the same Bachelor of Laws degree. The only difference is when you do the 4-year, you have to do electives. And when you do the 3-year, you're only doing law subjects.
Okay, good. Thank you. Just reading more questions. If you're wanting to work with an international law framework such as the United Nations, would you take subjects in international law, or how would you go about specializing? Kathy, could I ask you to answer that? How would you specialize?
Sure. There is a compulsory course in international law which all LLB students have to do in intermediate year, and that's a half-year course. But to specialize in international law, you would really need to do a master's degree.
Great, thank you. Okay, those are sort of all very similar questions. I think we've answered most of these. Someone's asked again about if pure maths is required. It may be required for BCom application. I'm not sure if you need pure maths to get into the commerce faculty, but it isn't required to get into the law faculty. I think what matters the most with entry into the law faculty is having generally a high grade average. Okay, I think we are going to kick on and move to the next section, which is just a brief overview quickly of scholarships, because I'm sure many of you have a lot of funding questions. So I am going to screen share.
Sorry, Gaby, can I add something before you go on?
Please.
I
Yes.
wanted to just urge all applicants. I want to urge all applicants to have a look at the undergraduate prospectus online and see if they qualify for the entrance criteria, because today is the last day to change your degree choice if you wish to choose a different degree at UCT, and you'd have to inform admissions thereof.
Kelly, that sounds very important. Could you please repeat that?
So today is the final date that applicants can change their degree choice. And I know that we have unprocessed applications at the moment, so that's why I'd like to urge applicants to have a look at the prospectus to see if you qualify for an offer for the LLB. For example, for guaranteed offer in Band A, you need a percentage of 88 per subject, the 6 subjects that we add to get you to that 530 points faculty point score. So just that they are aware of what the criteria is for the LLB, and if they are eligible for an offer, and if not, they can also have a look at the combined stream at Humanities and Commerce, what their criteria is, and then if they wish to change the application, they need to contact admissions, and admissions will change it for them. And today is the deadline to do so.
Great, thanks, Kelly. So today's the deadline if you want to change your application choices. All right, let's have a quick look at scholarships and funding. So the question everybody wants to know is what funding support is available to study law. We've had a lot of questions about NSFAS funding in the Q&A, and we'll try and respond to some of those here. So there are various sources of funding available to study law. Most of them have, well, they've various eligibility criteria. Some are based on academic performance, some are based on total family income for the year. Various criteria are used across the different sources of funding. And some, it must be said, are highly competitive based on academic performance. So the 4 main sources that we sort of deal with routinely are, number 1, NSFAS, and I would hope that all of you are aware by now of the National Student Financial Assistance Scheme. It's I'll go into the detail of it in the next slide, but that is a really critical source of funding for a lot of students who come to UCT. The second one is UCT's Financial Aid Office. The third one is that the Faculty of Law offer our own excellence scholarships, and those are very much based on 2 criteria. One is redress and transformation in the law profession, and academic performance. And the 4th source of funding is external funding, and I'll look into this in a little bit more detail as we go through. So on NSFAS funding, I am sure that most of you know, I think their applications close at the end of November, so there's still time to apply if you think you might be eligible. It's a comprehensive government funding scheme that ensures that financial circumstance is not a reason why students aren't able to study. And usually it is what is called full cost funding, and NSFAS will end up covering most of at least your fees and accommodation or subsistence, some kind of monthly stipend if you live at home. All the information about terms and conditions and criteria are available on the NSFAS site. And I would hope that that is logged in all of your application notes, nsfas.org.za. Funding for NSFAS funding, is available for students with a total family income of less than 350,000 a year. So that's their cutoff. But if you don't qualify by that criteria, you would need to apply to UCT's financial aid office. The office already administers the NSFAS scheme at UCT, so they have a very good handle on who's applying, who has applied to NSFAS but might not have qualified, and who then might be eligible for support from UCT's own funding support. All the information is available on UCT's website. If you Google undergraduate financial assistance, student financial aid, any similar kind of combinations, you will come up with UCT's funding support scheme for undergraduate students. So please do have a look there. The Faculty of Law, as I said, offers excellent scholarships, and we raise donor funding to do this. So we've built up a fund from which we are able to support, provide some fee support every year to a limited number of students. These are highly competitive, and because there are only a few that we are able to offer, the competitiveness ends up being based on marks. Please have a look at the law faculty site. If you haven't already been there, it's at scholarship funding. And if you look on the faculty's main website page, as you land, there's a string of buttons down the left-hand side of the page, and scholarship funding is one of them. So go and have a look there, see if you think you're eligible, apply even if you think you're not. And then the fourth option is the external funding, and UCT has a whole book of external funding opportunities from corporates, from private foundations, from just a range of places that offer funding support to students. There are quite a few that are specific, sort of specifically geared to law students. You can find, again, all of that information at the law faculty scholarship funding page, or again, if you provide, if you Google or search for UCT financial assistance, you will find the pages that hold this information. But definitely go and investigate these options and find out what you may or may not be eligible for, and what is worth at least submitting an application for. So that's okay. So one of the questions that came out of this that was sort of particularly applicable to the funding issue, one of the questions that's been asked quite a few times is NSFAS seems to have stopped funding the graduate LLB programs. So I'm going to comment on what I do know, which is that NSFAS is, I think, becoming a little more considered in which graduate or postgraduate degrees it does and doesn't fund. The LLB was, the graduate LLB was one that they have funded, and they funded it for quite a few years, but my understanding is that increasingly students are being turned down by NSFAS. And I understand that there are discussions where NSFAS is going to stop funding the 3-year LLB. I'm not sure about the 2-year LLB. As far as I understand, they are still funding the graduate LLB for students who are doing the combined stream. So who've got law undergraduate majors and who want to do the 2-year LLB. But is there anyone, perhaps Dr. Idenson, you might have more information on NSFAS's funding of the LLB?
No, Gaby, I think that you've summed up our current information perfectly. What I can say is that the various law faculties within the country are working together to see whether they can persuade NSFAS to confirm that they will fund the 2-year graduate portion of the combined stream, but the current position is as you explained.
Chatting away with my microphone muted, apologies. Thanks, Kathy, for providing that, because I know there's been quite a bit of concern in the question section around what I do about the rest of my degree if NSFAS isn't going to fund it. So just keep, put your applications in, keep sort of trying to get clarification from NSFAS, and as Dr. Idison's pointed out, the law faculties around the country, it is something that they are also working on. We've got a whole host of questions that we've not yet been able to publish. I'm not completely sure if we're going to be able to get to all of these, but we will try. We have answered a lot of them already. And I think we are going to move on right now to the Law Students Council. Hopefully they will be able to share perspectives, answer some of your questions, calm some of your fears about being a law student at UCT. I'd like to hand over to Danelle Plaatjes, who is the Law Students Council President for 2019-2020. This year's Law Students Council has done an amazing job and have again had to make the most of being the Law Student Council and student representatives under lockdown and under remote conditions. So Danelle, welcome. Tariq, if you could make Danelle live. There you are. Excellent. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm handing over to you.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. So as and I do have a few of my colleagues here as well. I'm just going to start off by introducing myself before we get into our presentation, where we'll sort of run down a few bits of important information that we feel like you should know. So yeah, I am the current sitting chair / president of the LSC, and the Law Students Council is for students. We're elected by students, and so everything that we do is about students. And so we hope that the session is informative and helpful, and I hope that it will put your mind at ease to see actual students, very diverse group of us as well, although it's just half of the team here today. So yeah, team, introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. I'm Iman. I'm the Vice President Internal of the Law Students Council. And basically what this entails is that I'm in charge of two things mainly within the Law Students Council. The first thing is in charge of internal discipline. So if anything happens within the team, I regulate that. And then the second part is a really important part, especially for first-year law students. I'm the coordinator of the mentorship program. So when you come into the law faculty, regardless of which stream, so if you're coming straight out of high school, if you're a postgraduate student, or if you're a humanities or commerce student coming into the law faculty, you will be assigned a mentor. So this is someone that is in the second, third, or fourth year of the LLB, and basically they assist you in adjusting to the law faculty, because even if you are coming from another degree, this is the first time you're doing a law degree. So obviously that transition from wherever you're coming from is difficult. And basically we provide support that is not academic, and it's more on a personal basis. And yeah, so we work very closely, you go through training. The mentors are fully equipped with all the necessary skills to assist you in this transition and to make your first year at law school as meaningful and easy as possible. So definitely stay tuned for any information that you receive at orientation. And during the first week of law school, it's super important to keep your eyes peeled for any communication from your mentor, because the program is so beneficial and we've been able to transform it this year and just honestly achieve great things from the mentorship program.
Hi guys, I'm Kabir Shagan. I'm the treasurer of the Law Student Council. Yeah, just basically deal with the budget of the council, maintenance of the office, kind of a very functional portfolio. Not much to say about that. And yeah, I'd just like to agree with what Imani said about the mentorship program. Especially, I was a mentor this year, and you definitely see how mentorship helps certain students, and you form friendships with them. And yeah, it's really something to get involved in. At some point, when you guys reach that stage where you feel like you want to be a mentor, I really advise it. Okay, cool. Handing over to Lita.
Hi everyone, I'm Lita Msanga, you can call me Lita, and I'm the academic chair of the LSC. I'm basically the person that students come to when they have any academic concerns. So I work a lot with the class reps, faculty management, lecturers, and all of that. And I sit on a couple of committees which deal with academic matters. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, thank you everyone for introducing themselves. So now we're going to take you all through a presentation. So I'll be sharing my screen. And yes, please sort of spot in any questions that you may have and we'll try our best to answer them. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry about that. So the first aspect that we touched on, which falls under one of the LSC's responsibilities, is the mentorship program. And sort of this is just to help you all with the transition into the law faculty, because a lot of the information you'll get will be very technical. It will just deal with how you get your degree, how you get into the faculty, and those kinds of things. Whereas when you have a mentor, right, they're allocated according to what stream you're in. So whether you're in the graduate stream, whether you're coming from high school, and we basically try and get you a mentor that will fit in with exactly the types of needs that you will have, right? And the program is very interactive, it's very active, even in the online setting. And so we hope that through this process and also through engaging in the mentorship program, you're able to sort of fulfill everything that you need in order to get through your degree. So little tricks that you learn while you're completing your LLB. It's also important in terms of cultivating relationships, because your LLB is also the beginning of your professional career. And you'll find often you will meet someone that you've met at law school along your professional journey. And so we try to create this platform to make sure that that transition and also the introduction to this process and to this professional world is both fulfilling and interactive and very well-rounded. The next important bit, which was also touched on earlier, was the orientation program. So the LSC is also very involved in this aspect, and we try to make the program appealing to all sort of groups of students. We also, what we do at the orientation program is introduce you to all the societies you can join. So the Mood Society for Mock Courts, the Students for Law and Social Justice, who deal with outreach activities that also get you some legal experience in drafting and working with other attorneys. Other societies also include CLS that deals with sort of disciplinary processes, and you can also get involved there. So there's a whole range of things that you can interact with, and Orientation Week also just sets out, first of all, you'll meet your LSC. So there's currently an election process going on, so we won't be seeing our faces as LSC members going forward, but you definitely will have an LSC and you'll be introduced to them, and you'll get to know also the people that will be joining the faculty alongside you, which is just such a great experience. It's such an important program, and we try to make it as informative as possible every year with the help of quite a bit of staff members and a lot of information you get over there, so try not to miss it. So now we want to touch on life as a law student. So first thing I want to say before I hand over to Iman is that you need to use your resources, right? So there's a lot of facilities in the law faculty. We have fantastic library facilities and resource sort of databases and things like that. We have an amazing writing center with students who are trained to help you with legal writing and how to start, working with legal materials and writing really good arguments so that you can work through academic work, projects and assignments and be very successful in that. We also have sort of very well qualified lecturers and tutors who also help you with these processes. And basically what I just want to carry over is that the resources are there and you just have to use them. And, you know, a lot of students learn about this in first year and they're like, okay, great, I'll try and use it, and never really get into it. But it really is such a fantastic resource to have, especially the Writing Center. And so I would like to urge you that once you have the opportunity to engage with the Writing Center tutors and so on, that you grab that with both hands, because really the resources are there to get you started. Iman?
Thank you, Danal. I think just adding on that, it's super important to just take every single opportunity that comes your way. I think that was the biggest, I would say, plus that I learned from law school. So I was a combined stream student, and transitioning from my other degree, honestly, just take every single opportunity that comes your way. Don't say no to anything. The Writing Center is there. All these resources are honestly there to make your experience and your degree as easy as possible. So I'm going to just touch on societies and organizations for a bit. So the Law Students Council, we hold something called Plaza Day, so on Middle Campus. So the law faculty is located on Middle Campus, whereas the other faculties are located on Upper Campus. We have our own Plaza Day. So this is basically a day where societies and organizations have stalls and advertise to students to join their society, and basically explain it's an opportunity for you to get to know the society and the organizations, and also which society would be the best fit for you, their sports, clubs, basically anything that you can imagine. There's a society for that. And you can, so it's just a great opportunity. Danal mentioned that we have a lot of legal societies. So it was mentioned earlier that as a first year law student, there's no course to moot in, but there is a moot society, so you can get involved with mooting from your first year. And it's a great opportunity to get practical experience in the law faculty, because a lot of our degree is theoretical. So with the societies and organizations, it's an opportunity for you to experience what life is like in the practical legal sense. So I'm just going to talk briefly about what online learning has been like. I think it's interesting because this was obviously the first example or situation where it was online learning, both for us and for the lecturers. So I think for the majority of the first semester, it was sort of figuring out what exactly is online learning, not only for students, but also for the lecturers. So it was a lot of communication back and forth, and now easing into the second semester, we've sort of established what works for both lecturers and what works for students. So I think we can safely say that, heaven forbid, if COVID-19 continues into 2021, it all had online learning has been firmly established. So we've worked out, what works and what doesn't work for students and for lecturers. It obviously hasn't been easy as with the majority of this year, but what a good thing about the LLB is that it teaches you resilience. So it teaches you to just stick it out through the difficult times. As like all degrees, things get difficult and tricky at times. And I think this year was a perfect example of that. So I think at the end of it, the fact that we're all here still is testament to the fact that it is doable. It's not easy, but yeah, it was challenging in the beginning. But I think, like I mentioned, now we've all established what works and what doesn't work. And yeah, so please feel free to ask us any questions in the comment section. And I think, yeah, we'll be able to answer them. And in terms of our last bullet point on the slide, like Danal mentioned, the Law Students Council is here to assist you. So if you have any questions or queries, problems, we are here for students. Our constituency is the students, so we want to help you. We want to figure out any possible solution to your problem. We have an office, a physical office in Kramer, which is the law building on Middle Campus, so you can pop in, we have office hours every single day, come chat to us, and well, not us, it'll be the next LSE, but yeah, we definitely are. The LSE is super friendly and they are there to assist you and help you transition into life as a law student.
going to open the floor for questions if anyone has any. And thank you so much for listening to us engage with the content that we wanted to convey to you all today.
Thank you very much, Danelle and your team. That's fantastic input you provided. We've got lots of questions still. Some of them are related to the session before yours, but one that has come in relative to students is, can you join law societies as a BA student? So Danelle, can you answer that?
Sure, of course. No, you can definitely join law societies as a BA student. In fact, all UCC societies only really require that you are a registered UCT student to join them. So there are students from different faculties that are active in some of the legal societies. But of course, law societies are more beneficial for law students because you actually know a lot of the information or have engaged with that content in class settings. And so it becomes an outlet to sort of put that experience to practice and also to see some of the sort of contextual issues that exist that aren't necessarily as visible to you when you're covering content in class.
Thanks, Danelle. If any of you have questions specifically for the Law Students Council, if you want to get a better sense perhaps of what it's actually like being a law student, please pop them in the Q&A. And in the meantime, I'm just going to go back and see what other questions have been asked that still ideally would need to be addressed. So bear with us, everybody. Okay, there is a question. How many students are selected for the LLB every year? I think we did answer that, but Tabile, if you wouldn't mind just addressing that again quickly.
Yes, we did say, Gaby, we take 55 students for the 4-year LLB. In total, we take 220 students for the overall first-year class, and this comes from the 3 different LLB streams, but 55 are coming from the 4-year LLB program.
Okay, great, thank you. What are the requirements that one needs to obtain until the end of the school year once a conditional offer has been made? So I guess you would need to keep your marks up. You would still need to reach the minimum required in your matric finals. Tabile, would you mind addressing that quickly?
Yes, again, we're getting a lot of this same type of question. You have to maintain the entrance requirements. So if you've got a conditional offer, it means you met them with that set of results. You must maintain it with the final set of results in February.
So keep studying, I think is the yeah, don't take your foot off the pedal. Keep going until the very end. One of the questions that's been asked is, will orientation also be online? I'm just going to answer that very briefly. I think that very much depends on where things are at next year. So at the moment, it's actually quite difficult to say. It will depend on all sorts of national and university level planning. Orientation is such a kind of hands-on getting a feel of the building, of the library, of the resources, that having it online, if it is required to have an online orientation, it really would be quite a different kind of thing, and would probably be a lot about orienting students to online ways of working. It's quite an interesting challenge, so thanks for asking that question.
Sorry,
yes,
can I just add to that? So at the moment, there is a orientation planning committee, and as the Law Students Council, we also sit on that committee. So at the moment, we are preparing for both situations. So for the worst, if this does continue into 2021, there is preparations in place to make the orientation virtual experience as beneficial and smooth as possible. And on that same token, if things do happen to alleviate and the situation does ease, there are sort of preparations being made for physical visits or a physical aspect in addition to the virtual experience.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. I'm just reviewing again. There's a question here that says, why does my application say deferred? And the answer that's been provided is, if an applicant meets the entrance criteria, they will receive an offer. If they do not, if they do not meet the criteria, the application status will remain as deferred until final results become available. So I hope that that has answered your question. I'm going in again to see what other, because we have loads of questions coming in. I'm just going to have a quick look. When will orientation take place? Well, actually, Iman, perhaps you could answer that since you're on the planning committee.
So orientation usually takes place about a week before lectures start. So this would obviously depend. I think Dr. Kathy Idenson mentioned that that the academic year for 2021 would commence around March, towards the end of March. So presumably before the end of March, about a week before. The law faculty orientation usually takes place over 3 days, whereas the other faculties are quite longer. But yeah, it would just depend when exactly the firm dates for the academic year are set.
Thanks very much, Iman. We've got a question here. Are the requirements the same for candidates from IB schools? I think this might speak to the matriculation exemption matric board issue that we had a look at earlier, but I'm going to ask Dr. Idenson if she can perhaps speak to that question. Are the requirements the same for candidates from IEB schools?
That's a question for Kelly.
Kelly, if you could answer. I actually think Kelly unfortunately had to leave us. Tabile, might you have that information?
So Kelly's not here, Gaby. I would say, can the applicant contact us? But the applicants are different for non-NSC applicants. So if the applicant can just contact us on law studies, we'll be able to give them the application requirement, again, based on the stream that they are applying for. I think it's important when people ask a question to mention which stream you are talking about.
Okay, thanks very much, Tabile. I will pop the email addresses into the chat. Let's just have a look. What do you mean by final results when one has already submitted school leaving results? I think if you have already completed matric and those are yours, or the matric equivalent, and those are your school leaving results, then final results wouldn't apply to you. I think that's correct, but I'm going to ask Tabile again to bear me out on that.
So again, would this be somebody who has received a final response, or is it someone who has been deferred? Because it means then the application is still being processed and they will hear from us probably by the end of October on the final outcome.
Thanks, Tabile, appreciate that.
Sorry to interrupt
yes,
again. I think I skipped, I saw 2 comments or questions about what are the worst and best parts about being a law student. And I think the LSE can definitely speak to this. And I'll just start off. I think this is definitely a personal question and there are definitely personal biases. But speaking from my own perspective, I would say, you know, okay, so I'm in my 3rd year now. I have 1 year left to go of the LLB, and I would say definitely the best part, there isn't really one specific thing, but I think the nice thing about this law degree is that it really teaches you about who you are as a person and sort of all the great aspects and components and skills that you had coming into university and leaving high school. It just gets heightened and refined. So you think, you know, obviously you've been through matric now, it's like the worst possible thing, the most difficult thing you've ever been through. Coming into law school, it obviously is difficult like any other degree, and you obviously have to dig deep down at certain times. You want to give up like any other degree. but it just teaches you the strength and resilience and these fine-tuned skills that you actually need going into this legal profession, because it is definitely competitive and you need to have a thick skin. So law school teaches you to have that and to be resilient. And also, I would say the best thing about law school is just the people skills that you meet, because every single day you interact with so many people. And just tying into another question that I saw about the LSC, you know, interacting with people, you learn so many skills about what's it like to communicate, how you send an email, all these great things that you need to know being in the legal profession. So I would say definitely people skills and how to communicate and manage people. And in terms of the LLB in general, time management, learning how to study properly, all these reading skills, these are all great things. And in terms of what is the worst thing about, you know, law school, I would just say, like any university degree, it gets difficult at times for sure, and you just have to remember why you signed up for this in the first place. So you just have to have that at the back of your mind always, and there are going to be difficult days, but on that same note, with the difficult days, there are going to be good days. They're going to be great days. You're going to meet great people. You're going to meet great friends. So I think it's just about balancing the two and just sort of taking the good days and then also noting that there are going to be bad days as well. So yeah, and then I'll go to Denal now, and then maybe Denal, if you want to answer the question about how do you run for the LSE, when do you run for the LSE, and why should you run for the LSE?
Okay, great. So I've made it to my final year, and what I think is important, so a lot of the students that are sort of find law school to be difficult in the beginning are the ones that are coming straight from sort of high school and secondary schooling. And I will say that what I wish I knew at the beginning was just to really get out of your shell and use as many of the resources as possible. I know that in the law faculty, there's a bit of a multi-grade system. So you have students who have degrees and you have students who have been at UCT for 3, 4 years, 10 years, etc. I have someone in my class who has 3 degrees already, but that aside, so you get in there and all you have is your NSC and you feel intimidated, but you sort of, there's just no room for that introspection. Just get into it and use your resources. The law faculty has accepted you based on you meeting those requirements that you need to basically survive this place. And so that means that you have the capability and you also have the sort of ability, I guess, in some to say, to navigate the LLB and do well. A big part of doing well in the faculty is confidence. It translates into your writing, it translates into how you carry yourself. And so once you're able to attain that, you can do very well. So it's a lot of hard work, a lot of confidence, and just using the amazing resources that the faculty does offer. In terms of how to join the LSC, so the LSC has 9 members, and we're a body that has been appointed by general election. So it's kind of like if you've had a prefectship in a previous high school or a class rep of sorts. So you sign up, you run a campaign, and you get voted in. If you're in an uncontested election, you sign up and you sort of go in through a process of being allocated a position. And yeah, I think you should definitely sign up if you do join the faculty. It's a great opportunity to develop your skills. A lot of people say that being in the LSC or being in a leadership position in any student society is stressful, but the legal profession is stressful. It's not going to be easy. So you need to develop those skills. You need to be able to be resilient. And the only way you can get resilient is if you practice working through difficult times, if you practice sort of overcoming your those shortcomings that you have, your weaknesses, tackling them head on, and not being demotivated by sort of the slumps that you fall into. And everyone can do it, and you can do it. Once you get into that door, it will be done. And again, if there is confusion, I do urge you to please email the the necessary people who are staff members who are well informed as soon as possible. You know, a big part of being in the law faculty is ask when you don't know. Guesses are costly. Don't guess. Don't assume. Don't be afraid. Just find out the information and do it properly, especially when it comes to an admission process, because it's online. It's not like a walk-in where you can just be like, hi, did I do this part correctly? So if you're not sure, UCT has obviously given you email addresses, contact details, websites where you can find out information. So this is basically the first part of you being part of the law faculty. You have to take initiative, and you know, this is your life. So go ahead, go find that information. There's amazing people in the faculty that can help you. So don't let that opportunity fly by.
Yeah, I just wanna add on to what my colleagues have already said about being a law student. Now, I think they must, like, obviously trying to make this succinct, but the gray areas is where you're gonna find a lot of the joy. The relationships that you form at the faculty are amazing, whether it's with the staff, whether it's with your friends. A typical day for me, for example, I came there straight out of high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I came to law and I thought, let me give this a shot. You'd walk up early morning, 8 o'clock to upper campus from middle campus, sweating. You'd get to your lecture. You might get there late for your elective. You'll be questioning yourself, do I actually need to know philosophy? Like, why am I taking this elective? Why am I taking sociology? You'll walk back down to your law lecture, and then you'll get a lecture that you might not like. My style of teaching, you might not like the way they approach certain things, but you learn how to deal with it, and that's the most important thing. You learn how to deal with a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. There are amazing people in the faculty, like Danal said, the ground staff, the cleaning staff, just the faculty, the admin people. I urge all you prospective law students to get to know everyone, form good relationships with them, because it really comes in handy when you need it most. Don't guess. Ask. If you don't want to email, you don't know who to email, go around, go to Baby. She's always there. She's helped me so many times. Go to Monique, go to the faculty office and ask for help, and they will give you help. No one will ever deny you help. There's sort of this this energy that a lot of people like to attribute to Kramer, of this toxic competitiveness, and it does get like that. You feel like that a lot of the time, that everyone just competing with each other. But then again, you'll meet a group of friends, you get out of your shell, and you talk about things and you get through it. Okay. Get involved in societies. Don't leave it till late. Yeah, guys. It's fun. It's a lot of late nights. Sometimes you'll get tears, and that's okay. That's all okay. A lot of people come out to matric and they've gotten 90% and 80%, and they come to law and then they see their marks dropping to like a 50%. That's all part of the process. And I'm not trying to make you guys scared. I'm just trying to give you the real deal, what it is to be a law student. You'll be equipped to deal with the reality of the situation, and you'll find yourself. And it's doable, guys. Nothing insurmountable. If I can do it, you can do it. Thanks.
I just want to add as well to what Kabir is saying. You're going to hear that a lot, that when you come to law school, your marks will drop, or they might drop. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will drop or that you aren't capable of getting those 80s and 90s. It just means that you need to be prepared for those hard times, because sometimes it happens. You work really hard. You literally spend all week studying and everything, but you just don't get the mark that you want. So you need to be ready, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. Even when we talk about asking for help, it doesn't only mean lecturers, tutors. One of the first things you're going to hear at orientation is that you need a friend in law school. And it's so true, because sometimes your friend knows certain sections that you don't know, and they can explain them better to you, and it helps. It really helps to know that someone is in it with you. So don't come with the attitude that, I'm here to do law. There's this toxic, atmosphere in Kramer. Come in. People are so helpful. Ask people questions. Your peers are always willing to help. I know that, in our class, we're always just ready to help one another, and I think that's really important.
Thank you all. Iman, did you notice any other questions that you thought might be specifically directed to the Law Students' Council? There was a question that asks, does the faculty teach students to study properly? And I thought you guys are probably the most qualified to answer that.
Yeah, I just saw that one. That one is the last question that I saw in terms of what we could answer. I think the faculty and the university definitely equips you with the skills that you need to succeed. But I think it's important to remember that university isn't high school anymore, whereas high school, you're very used to a certain method and certain way of learning. Now in university, it's completely different. So it's a lot more independent, and just remembering that. But that's why you have first year. There are certain courses and certain skills that you have to learn in order to succeed in your degree. But it definitely, law school definitely equips you with the necessary skills that you need to do. In terms of like writing essays, those kinds of things, you definitely are taught. You have mandatory classes that you have to attend in order to learn how to do those things. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, if anybody else wants to talk about that. But yeah, in terms of any other questions, I just want to go back to the LSC, like how do you run for that? In essence, it's an election process, like Danal mentioned, like a prefect. You submit an application to an office, and that gets released to the student populace, and they hold elections. So votes get taken, those kinds of things. You have meetings with the student body, and then you get elected into office. In terms of when you can run for that, the elections usually happen now in September/October at the end of the year every year. So you obviously have to be at least at the end of your first year of law school to run for the LSE.
Do any other Law Students' Council members have something to contribute on that? No, I kind of think you answered it, Iman. Okay, great. We've got 3 minutes to go, so I think we need to wrap up a little bit.
Sorry, Gabby.
Yes, Danelle.
One question where someone asked about how many students are in a class for lectures. So I think I can answer that. So I see you mentioned 20 to 30 students as well. So that's more of the smaller group tutorials that you will have during your course. But in a lecture, there's roughly just over 100 students. But obviously attendance will vary depending on the time which the lecture takes place, etc. But your entire class should be in a lecture. But you'll come to find that the independence of university prescribes certain attendance to be interesting. But for next year, there will be a lot of integration in how you learn. So that you might not necessarily have that many people in a room and so forth. But yeah, the lectures are bigger groups, and then you will have a smaller group opportunity, which would be your TUTs every week. But do not worry about these kinds of things. All of this information will definitely come to you in due time. You never get anything later than when you need it.
Great, thanks, Danelle. We are going to have to bring things to a close. We've had so many questions. I think they're literally about 200 questions that have come in. So we hope that we've been able to address and answer most of those questions as we've gone. One of the questions that does keep coming up is whether this recording, this session will be available afterwards. It will be, it is being recorded. The questions also get captured. So for those questions that we've not been able to answer at all, or a kind of similar question, because I think most of the questions we've answered in one way or the other, but if we've not been able to answer your question or a similar question, we will add in some of those answers and provide a link to a sort of frequently asked questions from this session on the law faculty website. So keep an eye out there. I think really it is just to wrap up, to say thank you to the Law Students' Council. It's been great having you here. I can see a couple more questions about what it's like being a law student. So thanks for sharing your insights. To Dr. Idenson, the Deputy Dean for Undergraduate Studies in the Law Faculty, thank you for joining us. To Tabile Loko, who is the Faculty Manager, who is responsible for all the admissions, for course management, for basically keeps the faculty running. Thank you for joining us. Kelly van der Vent, the Undergraduate Manager, thank you very much. Professor Danwood Chirwa, our Dean, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you also to ICTS and Classroom Support Services for making this possible. This online kind of format is still quite new for a lot of us. So it's been really great that we've been able to have all of you participants with us this evening. Thank you for joining us. I know 2 hours is a long time, but you've stuck it out. You've asked all these questions. Keep an eye out on the Law Faculty website. The address is in the Q&A section, and have a look there for follow-up, for more information, and there are also contact details if you need to get hold of the faculty. So thank you all. Maybe we'll see you next year, hopefully. Thank you to all who've participated. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.